Hi, girls.
Hey.
Hi, Dr. Cloud. As you can see, we're uploading a video instead of a PowerPoint, and we'll explain why later. But let me show you the PowerPoint that we made.
The history of gloves in fashion. Gloves go back as early as the caveman era and have evolved throughout history. The origin of protective gloves dates back to prehistoric times when early cavemen wore gloves made from animal skin to protect themselves from injury when they hunted. Egyptian women also used them while working and cooking meals. Gloves were then found in pyramids. The first gloves were shaped like bags without finger holes and tied at the wrist. Soon after, mittens were created. Linen gloves with drawstring closure were found in the tomb of King Tut. There is evidence that much later, in classical times, gloves were used by the ancient Persian and Greeks to protect their hands against the cold and thorns, as well as in warfare and sport. Gloves are also seen in ancient writings such as the Odyssey. Only dignitaries and royalty wore gloves in medieval Europe as they were a symbol of status. At this time, gloves went from a necessity to a fashion accessory around the 13th century, thanks to advances in tailoring, such as delicate stitches between the fingers. Some knights wore mail gloves under their plated gauntlets to add strength and protection. During the Renaissance, the purpose of gloves was solely decorative, to display the wealth and status of the owner. They were worn in the hat or in the belt and carried in the hand. They were popular as gifts. In battle, they were thrown down as a challenge. Colored silks were used to cover densely embroidered satin, which was heavily padded to give pronounced 3D effect. Doeskin and kid were the main types of leather used. Although embroidery was the principal form of decoration for accessories, tapestry was also used. Lace was freely used on gloves. The shapes outlined in pearl reflect the taste for strapwork, a style of decoration deriving from France and Italy in the 16th century. The embroidery of the early 17th century has given way to the lavish use of ribbons in the 1660s and 1670s. No 17th century ensemble was complete without gloves, and this particularly lavish pair would have belonged to someone well-born and very wealthy. There was a change in trend as the 17th century progressed. The shape of gloves changed. The gauntlets became smaller and the length of the fingers shortened to more natural proportions. The embroidery is much denser than at the beginning of the 17th century, with a preference for metal thread over colored silks. In an age when personal hygiene involved the masking of body odors rather than washing them away, gloves were often perfumed. Etiquette in the 18th century required a lady's hands to be covered at all times, outdoors and in mixed company indoors. Some ladies even prided themselves on never going ungloved, even while sewing. Gloves and mittens were essential accessories, and most aristocratic women owned dozens of pairs. Mittens were popular as they covered the backs of the hands, but left the thumb and fingers free to do needlework or play cards. As an inexpensive alternative to leather, many gloves and mittens were made of silk in a variety of colors to complement gowns and other accessories. Printed gloves of this style epitomize neoclassic style in England and throughout Europe, but are said to have originated in Spain. By the end of the 19th century, wearing of gloves indoors was declining except for evening dress, where they were required accessories. In the 1880s and 1890s, these grew longer, extending over the elbow to the upper arm. The combination of a kid leather hand with a silk net or mesh arm became a popular style. They were cheaper than full leather gloves, easier to pull on, and allowed a greater variety of color and decoration. Men's glove didn't change much. They were worn outside for work and fashion. Subdued colors were used to match clothing. Fawn kid or gray suede were popular with frock or morning coats or at weddings. Tan was worn with lounge suits, and plain white or cream suede with black stitching were worn for evening wear. In 1910, the fabric we know today as rayon was originally introduced as artificial silk, but the word artificial seemed to displease a few customers, so the name was changed to rayon in 1924. In the picture, you can see the long gloves made of rayon worn by the woman. Also, the Grenoble region in France is the center of the glove-making industry at the time, and much of their product was purchased by Americans. Later, in the 20s, this economic reign of glove sales was taken over by German glove makers. During the 20s, the gauntlet style of glove became popular, but not as much as the evening glove, because of America's obsession with Hollywood glamour. During the Depression, crochet lace glove patterns were available to consumers. Here we see the iconic Marlene Dietrich in long black evening gloves. In the 40s, the government created wartime regulations regarding fabric that could be used. Because of this, cotton became the fabric of choice, and into the 50s, cotton gloves could be easily washed and dyed a variety of colors to match an outfit. During the 50s, women were often not seen outside of the house without gloves on. The colors white and cream were favored because clean-looking gloves were considered the hallmark of a lady. In the pictures to the right, you can see the gauntlet style of glove featured on the cover of a 1940s fashion magazine. And on the left is an ad from the 50s. Dents and Pittards were popular glove brands, but women could also make their own using a McCall's pattern. In the 60s, there were cutout peephole gloves and other creative designs, mostly in stretched nylon. By the 70s, gloves were commonly used for function. Jackie Kennedy wore white or matching gloves during her time as First Lady. In the 1980s and 90s, glove styles varied from lace to fingerless to opera gloves. People like Madonna, Michael Jackson, and Karl Lagerfeld made gloves a part of their look. The punk movement also had a strong influence on the style of gloves, introducing chains, cutouts, and fingerless styles. These styles still resonate in today's fashion, as well as new ones being introduced all the time.